All right, it's time to clear the air and get to a topic that's a little bit more positive and happy, I suppose. Well, to some degree, there is a dark side to it as well, but it's virtual reality. Uh, I still love virtual reality and I still believe in it. And there's a lot of great stuff that's still happening in that space, but it is in a slightly precarious situation, I suppose, in terms of how certain pieces of hardware are being supported, even though there is still good software happening there. Um, but I wanted to start just by saying that one of my favorite experiences this year actually comes from Jurg himself and his team, and it's C-Smash VRS. I talked about this before, and man, C-Smash, that's how you first reached out to me about that after I talked about it on here as well. So it's Cosmic Smash, but like in VR, obviously. But it's a beautiful aesthetic, and I'm curious to know a little bit more. Like, how did you even get this off the ground? Like, how did you approach like going into Sega and being like, yeah, we want to bring back this somewhat obscure arcade and Dreamcast game and do it in VR? And how receptive were they to this?
I mean, it's like, first of all, like, it's this game is a collaboration with with amazing people, with Corey Schmitz and an archetype, and an art director, Rob Davis, on my end, and Kenny Shi, who did the music for Rez, and for instance, or some of the music for Rez, and Danilog from The Comet Is Coming, an incredible musician who was a headliner at Glastonbury Festival this year. And the dev team on this is Wolf and Wood, and this is my second collaboration with them. We also made The Last Worker together earlier, which came out earlier this year. An incredible team, VR pioneers here in the UK, who did A Chair in the Room, they did the Exorcist game, they did a bunch of really, really cool things in VR over the years. And but yeah, getting it off the ground was a weird one. I first in a random meeting met someone from Sega in 2019. And mentioned my wish to do that to him. It just sort of came to me in the meeting, because it has been a dream to do a VR Cosmic Smash since, like, I played it in 2001, and he just looked at me and he had no idea what I was talking about, because I mean it is, a very obscure title.
Kind of obscure, yeah.
So a $67 billion purchase of my company based on that IP is probably not going to happen tomorrow. But yeah, it's and then it took me a couple of years. Like, the pandemic happened, and I was, we were all surrounded by this dystopian reality that we all, was forcing us inside. And I was dreaming of something positive. I was dreaming of traveling into space. I was and just hitting a ball around and being fit and spending time with other people and being physical. And so I really made it my mission to get the rights, and it took going through basically every single level at Sega to finally bang every door down until they finally relented. But and they probably thought, and they probably still think to this day, that I'm insane, because I mean, it's freaking Cosmic Smash, but it's doing beautifully, and it's but it's been an interesting one, because you were talking about the hardware, and we're only out on PSVR 2 at the moment, wink wink, and it's a headset that is stunning. It's, I mean, in terms of, as far as gaming headsets are concerned, VR headsets are concerned, it's definitely the best, but it's very expensive, and so the take up on that has been pretty slow, especially in this economy, etc. It needs to be hooked into the PlayStation 5 via cable, which some people thought, oh, cable, but once it's on your head, you don't think about the cable one ever. But yeah, so in terms of that is a hard one, because we're only on that system. But we thought, you know what, we're going to use this year to go from one show to another. Bit Summit, for instance, in Kyoto, and IGN Plus was WASD in London, now in EGX last week, which was insane. There was like, I don't know how many people flocked into EGX. It was like 90,000 or something. And we were there for 4 days, and we regularly had queues of 50 people lining up to play our game. And now we're nominated for a Golden Joystick Award for Best VR Game. Actually, today is actually the last day to vote for it, I think. So by the time people listen to this, it will be too late.
Oh, no.
but I'm chuffed. It's this crazy idea is turned into something really really fun. It's a really fun game. You're playing squash and breakout in space, either alone or co-op or versus, with a huge vast amount of different modes. There's a sort of epic single player mode which takes you to the edge of space and time. There's boss battles in it. It's insane. It's the best music ever in a game. I really adore it, and it makes me smile, and others too, I hope, always.
Yeah, because I mean, fundamentally, that's the thing with a game like this, is that it translates a simple hand motion to a game in a way that actually reflects your motions are reflected in game, kind of like Wii Tennis did back in the day, but with much more accuracy now because of the way the hand controllers work on VR. It just feels satisfying, especially with the haptics. Every time you hit the ball, it just feels just right. And, you know, with the more complex VR games, which I love as well, you can still feel like you're kind of manipulating this thing in a space, but not really manipulating an object. But with a game like this, especially with this aesthetic, it does actually feel suitably like tangible in a way that I find really engaging. And that just rules. For sure. But yeah,
thank you. Yeah, it's because I think reality, the real world, is so distressing right now that but I also don't want to escape from it. I don't want to sort of escape from my responsibilities, but I want to travel places, and so we wanted to make a game that makes you travel into space and feel good, you know, with others or alone. And so that also means that we're not sort of doing some sort of slavish sort of simulation, but also we make you feel more powerful than you are in real life. Well, but we've also had pro tennis and squash players play it, and they pointed out how accurate it is, and they instantly were moving in that like crazy. So that's also fun to know. It's like if you are a pro, you can play it. But then I've also had people in wheelchairs play it against fully, jumping about the room people online, and with no advantage to either, because we're adjusting the height levels of players to be equal.
Right.
And so there's all these accessibility things that we've built in are completely invisible, and we've not been bragging about them or anything. Maybe we should. But it feels good to actually make a sports game, and a competitive physical sports game, that people of all abilities can play on the same level with each other. It's an absolute joy. It feels so delightful and positive, and that's, and there's just a few games out there that do that right now.
Yeah, and so, man, you kind of hinted at other platforms as well, and I hope that is the case. We are in this weird spot where, like, I feel like with the way the PSVR sales have been going, it would be tough at this point to greenlight another big project that just exclusively targets that. So it kind of feels like we're in a state where you kind of have to make your game target all available VR platforms, or at least all the major ones. I mean, obviously there's the meta stuff with the Quest, and the Quest 3 just came out, and that's pretty darn impressive. There's, there's kind of a split, I guess, between wired and wireless VR. And I feel like wireless VR is finally really starting to, it's jumping up in terms of quality enough at this point. You know what I mean? Where it feels more viable than it used to, perhaps. Like the hardware's powerful enough.
With C-Smash, C-Smash especially, I mean, it's like, it has, it doesn't go for realism at all. It's super stylized, especially graphic design made physical, which, and that's not to say that we don't have some super crazy cool shaders in the game, which, for instance, your body, the way it's rendered and fully arcade in it's stunning. It looks unlike anything else out there. And the whole world is actually alive. So all the tiles, when you hit them with the balls, start to create these dot ripples that are sort of embedded in each sort of surface in the game. There's such cool stuff happening then. But the frame rate is crazy high, right?
Oh, so, yeah.
As you personally pointed out, I think it might be the highest frame rate on PSVR 2 of any game.
Yeah, are you native 120 now? Or native 90?
What 90 for sure everywhere, but sometimes we creep up into the highest echelons. But it's like, but there are moments when you're playing online with others, etc., and there's so much data that we're sending across.
Right, that can interfere.
Yeah, but it's yeah no it's I mean it's buttery
Yeah,
smooth. You know, I don't
I
think you
actually
ever.
remember the demo had some technical hiccups, and you guys actually did fix them, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, within like days,
Yeah,
it was
that
crazy.
made a big difference. But
Yeah, it did. Yeah, so it's but so also like so that game will translate. You know, we haven't announced anything, or whatever, but it would of course translate very beautifully to all the other headsets. I mean, the Pico 4, for instance, is a gorgeous headset. You know, for people that are looking
so
for sort of Quest 2 generation headset.
I
It is super comfortable. I love
I
it.
have one right here actually. It's one I'm going to
Ah,
test here. I want to do a write up soon on some different headsets because I've been really interested in how they all compare. I've tested this. I've tested a Quest 2, Quest 3 now, and then I've tested high end PC stuff like the Pimax Crystal, which
oh
is a
yeah, it looks
which is a
cool.
totally different type of thing. But that is really focused on like ultra hardcore PC gaming pretty much exclusively because you're
Yeah.
driving like ultra high res screens in there. It's a heavy big headset, but like man, the quality of that experience is like it's almost like a window into the type of VR. It would be cool to see this like standalone, but I feel like it's going to be a while before we can get to the point where, you
That
know,
But
res.
but
Yeah.
but then there's the Apple Vision Pro, of course, coming next
but
year,
that's not even
which
really gaming specific, right? Like,
no, it's not. But we, as we know with them, if they have a Pro, then they'll do a
yeah,
non-Pro,
yeah.
whatever they're going to call it, probably the following year or whatever. Unless it's a complete disaster and a flop, who knows? But you know, and I know we were talking about the challenges at Unity, but it's interesting that they've had such a really close collaboration because Unity actually is, as far as VR
They're strong there.
development is concerned, they're much stronger than Unreal.
Yeah.
So it is. I'm excited about that fact that a lot of the R&D that will have crept in from their very lucrative collaboration with Apple would then also then trickle down or at least sideways to all the other headsets. So I think Apple entering that space actually bodes very, very well. And Meta is doing extremely well with the Quest 3 now. It's selling out in a lot of markets. They don't have any sort of titles that I can think of which are sort of like system sellers, but in a way they don't need to yet.
The Quest 3 is an interesting device because so having used that, I feel like the Pico 4 kind of occupies this middle space where it's kind of like almost towards the Quest 3, but not quite. But then even just the Quest 2 by itself is still pretty darn impressive feeling, I would
It's
say.
great.
But both the Pico 4 and the Quest 3 use pancake lenses now, which I'd heard a lot of hype behind, and it does help somewhat, but I won't say it makes as big of a difference as I was expecting. I still think
No, but the Pico 4 is just so darn comfortable, though, isn't it?
that's the
Like when
main
you put
that's
it
the
on your
main
head?
thing. It's a very comfortable device, and I think it's this type of fabric they use here on the edge, and the way it
Yeah.
sits on your face, even with glasses. It's like the other ones. I like for the Quest, I have to get lens inserts, and I did for the PSVR 2 as well, instead of wearing glasses. But this, like, it's not really necessary, and that kind of surprised me. Uh,
Yeah, because it's small. I don't know how they did
yeah,
it. Because
it's
it's not
wild.
it's not a big thing, and it's kind of light as well. I love the thing. I'm really
The
quite
Quest
impressed
3
by
is also relatively small there. Whoops, I disconnected that strap. The Quest 3 is also pretty small, I would say, and I think that comes down to the use of the pancake lenses. So it allows them to kind of reduce the thickness necessary, which helps. But man, it's interesting as well that all these standalone headsets are driven by Android, which I've always wondered if like the research and development that went into making VR viable using Android as an OS actually has like a knock-on effect of helping Android in general, just with like
It does,
performance related
actually.
things, right?
If you look at Vulkan extension support, it's a lot of it's VR driven, actually.
So like
sure.
yeah, right? Like VR is also good just for the Android ecosystem in general in terms of improving their performance numbers with 3D applications. So there's a positive thing there, but yeah, VR, it's in a weird spot, and I don't think it's ever going to become truly mainstream, at least not while headsets are the way they are. But like, it does seem to be at least. I mean, what do you think? Do you think there's enough of an audience there that you guys can still continue to make these types of games? And maybe it's the one space where AAA can't really invade, so to speak, as well.
Well, that's what part of the reason why I love it is because we don't know what works in it yet. Not really. I mean, Beat Saber is obviously an outlier, and it's a huge hit. There's a few other titles. I mean, Among Us in VR is huge, and I guess that's the case everywhere. Pistol Whip, but it's in a way we haven't had the VR hit yet. The thing that, or perhaps the sort of maybe more narrative driven VR game that everyone has to play.
Half-Life Alyx
was that, but it's still not coming to anything else, which is, crazy. I mean, the fact that it's sad that it's not been on PSVR 2. Yeah, I was really hoping it would be some surprise announcement this summer, but it wasn't.
I'm so surprised by that too, because the game itself is so good, and yet so few people could really easily play it, I guess. Yeah. And it's just like, man, but that's Valve. Valve just kind of does their own thing, right? And I don't think that Sony could wheel, even if they rolled a dump truck full of money up to their door, if they don't want to do it, they'll just be like, whatever.
Well,
we're not interested.
Gaben would be like, well, can we put Steam on your PlayStation 5?
Like they did with PS3, the PS
with Portal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what's going on. But yeah, it's a great game, and it's a shame that that's not on PSVR 2. The other thing is, the one thing I can't believe Astrobot Rescue Mission. Speaking of HD remakes, that's one I would have liked to see on PSVR 2, because it is genuinely the best 3D platformer I've ever played. So it's incredible, so good. And it's a classic. It's disappeared now. Sure. The only way, it's gated in the PSVR 1 headset. It's a tragedy.
I would assume those guys are working on a follow-up to that for PSVR 2. That has to be what else have they been doing since they launched
I hope so.
The Astrobot thing along with PS5, but they've been silent since, and almost.
Yeah, but who knows if they're making a VR game now, or if they're just making another flat game?
Because I bet it's VR. I would bet it's VR.
Or both.
Maybe
probably.
Both. Actually, both would be great, because I don't know how you. I guess with the way Astrobot works, it just uses the DualShock 4, right? So they could do the same here, and it used it in very clever ways that could work in a flat experience. So maybe they find a way to do that. I don't know, but
or maybe they some asymmetrical sort of co-op on that would be amazing as well. But who knows? Who knows what they do with it? But I hope so, because it's an absolutely incredible game, and it's one that hasn't been played by enough people. I genuinely think it's the best 3D platformer ever made.
It's up there for me. It's definitely one of the best I've ever played. It's extremely good.
After King Kong, or
it's not quite King Kong level, but it's close. It's close. I do actually have one little question, and maybe we can expand on this, from Simplex, who asks, any thoughts on the new VR hotness MetaQuest 3, especially the mixed reality that allows for a huge virtual screen displayed on an empty wall? I was one of the first, so I sincerely hope my question will be featured, and there you go, it is. Have you had a
well, it's a great piece of hardware. For the downsides to it, I'll get them out of the way. Is I wish it had eye tracking. It doesn't.
Right.
Right. That's something and the microphone isn't great on it. For some reason, I don't know why that is, but some sort of maybe they can fix that with some sort of software update. But other than that, it's an incredible headset. It's lighter, it's better, it's faster than the previous generation, and the mixed reality stuff and the pass-through stuff works really, really well. There's still a little bit of sort of like a floaty thing when you put your hands in front of it. You still feel like you're a little bit underwater.
Oh yeah,
with the pass-through. It's just
when you get, especially
makes me feel,
if you get close to something, right? If you put it on, you walk close to a shelf and you try to read the labels on something. Once you get the cameras too close to it, it all just goes nuts, and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a bit, but it's compared to the previous generation, it's awesome.
It feels amazing, and it kind of hints at what Apple, I think, wants to do with their Vision Pro, right? Obviously much cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of them of you actually starting up a game and then being, just teleported into a different world, minus the loading screen. The sensation that we were discussing at length earlier in Spider-Man, for instance, too. The idea of portals is exciting. The fact that you can walk through your living room into a virtual world and back out of it, etc., and then have that sort of like seamless flow with no load times between reality and fiction, etc., is beautiful, and it's starting to do that. And so I think it's great what they've done. It is more expensive than the previous generation.
Yeah.
So again, like, it's the timing with the world currently being in the state that it is not great, but I can't imagine that they're probably losing money on that hardware anyways to begin with. So who knows?
That's right. That's right.
But I think it's great. I think it's an amazing piece of hardware. But at the same time, we don't have to go pay for all of that if you don't want to play mixed reality. You want to play the sort of really great high-end VR games. Then you could also get a Pico 4 easily, or even a Quest 2. Because I think because there's tons of games still coming out for those systems and will be. And also, since there are about 20, 30, I don't know how many million Quest 2s out there, no one is going to stop supporting them anytime soon. So I think, for those whoever are on a tighter budget, I think it's okay to go for the previous generation Quest or indeed a Pico 4. And still enjoy the majority of amazing games now and coming up.
And hey, you can still use stuff like Virtual Desktop with them and do PC VR wirelessly, which always feels amazing.
Yes.
You lose a little bit of image quality, obviously, and you need a pretty fast router to pull it off, but there is a nice sense of freedom being untethered from your PC. So cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
now, VR is beautiful, and it may never be mainstream, or maybe one day it will be. But at the same time, we are all already living inside of virtual reality, and that's the thing that people don't. Yeah, I mean, every single time you cross the road with Google Maps, you are actually walking not inside the real world. You're walking inside a 3D projected map by Google.
That's right.
So and. So we're all constantly inhabiting virtual worlds without realizing it. So and that distinction is gradually being removed more and more. And of course, like, it's the headset right now that's causing this friction where people go like, oh shit, the commitment of putting this thing on, like shutting myself off from the rest of the world. Well, technically, you're already shutting yourself off from the rest of the world by staring at your phone while your kid is trying to get your attention. So, but how do we now sort of bring these realities and fiction together in a seamless way, in a humane way? And I think, interestingly, diving fully into an immersive world like VR is a portal back into the real world, a much better one than the sort of invisible thieves of our reality that we have surrounded ourselves with.
Oh yeah. Anyway, but yes, actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because with the Google Maps stuff, because I was thinking about how when I lived in Tokyo back in 2005 versus visiting this year, smartphones didn't really exist in this sense, right? So I had to navigate back then just by like signs and landmarks and things like that, and you couldn't really rely on a phone to get around. But once you have a phone, it just feels like it changes the experience. It's less adventurous, and almost like a cheat code somehow. You know what I mean?
It takes your thoughts away and your awareness of the world around you. It's weird. I was visiting a friend of mine in hospital in Berlin 10 days ago, and I get out of the main train station, and I immediately go like, oh, where's that hospital? So I go on the Google map, and it makes me cross a little bridge, and it gets close to where the chancellor is in those buildings. And then it was like a foggy day and stuff, so the whole thing was confused and shit. And then I look, hang on, it's somewhere over there. And I see this ginormous building, which literally just has a freaking hospital on it. And I'm such an idiot. I should have just fucking opened my eyes and then follow the big ass building. So it's weird how we're sort of we've automated ourselves out of thinking or being even aware of the world around us. And the thing about VR, what's so exciting to me, is that you're conscious, like you going to Tokyo or whatever, we're consciously traveling somewhere. Right. We're consciously taking ourselves VR. Out of now into that. I'm going there.
There's a barrier.
And once you take it off and you go like, I'm back.
Right.
And whereas the other thing is like, I've got this on, Game Pass, whatever, like $300 million game, I don't care. because my phone just rang and the cat wants attention and whatever. So it's like everything becomes nothing. And so I hope that the one thing that I love about VR, and I want to encourage people to experience, is that you get to really cherish someone else's creation and travel to a place and really take yourself away from the world around you and really be immersed. It is something else.
I agree.